Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is In Case You Missed It from Kates-Boylston for the week ending Friday, April 18th, 2025. We've got a ton of stuff coming up this week. I get another chance to talk about my favorite topic, which is NOR. I also want to give you kind of a preview of what's going to be in Funeral Service Insider this week. We are speaking with Joelle Maldonado, who's a really, really fascinating woman, and a gentleman who started this program for writing letters to the children of deceased parents. We'll talk about all that on the other side, but right now, let's start off with a message from our sponsor, Passages International. Looking for a way to honor your loved one while honoring the planet? At Passages, we specialize in eco-friendly funeral products made from renewable, biodegradable materials. Whether it's a stunning willow casket, a biodegradable urn for scattering, or our unique memorial keepsakes, we help create meaningful goodbyes that tread lightly on the earth. Join the movement toward greener funerals. Visit passagesinternational.com and discover how you can celebrate a life while protecting the planet for generations to come. Link in the show notes. So coming up in this week's Funeral Service Insider, which you will be able to get access to on Sunday if you're a subscriber, I have an interview with Joelle Maldonado. She is also known as the Grave Woman on social media, and she has kind of built this business of teaching people how to deal with textured hair and melanated skin, and to provide kind of an expansion on some of the embalming and cosmetic techniques that are taught in mortuary school. She started this business because when she was in mortuary school, she noticed that many, if not most, of the cadavers they got were white people with white hair, which left her short and left others short when it came to dealing with people who didn't have white skin and white hair, and it was time to, kind of get them prepared. It's something that doesn't have to just be learned on the job. And one of the things that happened, and we talk about it in the story, is during COVID, there was this huge influx of people just not going to the black or the white funeral home, but just going to the funeral home that could take them. And there she experienced this, where there weren't enough people who knew how to take care of textured hair and melanated skin. So anyway, it's a fun story. I also want to tease it because I have a different interview with her coming up next week on Funeral Service Insider, the podcast, and you don't want to miss that. If you're a subscriber, you definitely want to read this article, but even if you're not, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so that you can hear the show when it comes out. The other feature that we have this week is Bob DiPasquale. He isn't a funeral director. He lost his parents at an early age, and then he saw a friend who lost his parents at an early age, and he decided to start this program for funeral homes that allows them or gives them a way to suggest that if the parents, that when a parent has died, people write letters about the parent to the children who won't be able to read them yet, but who will be able to read them later on and appreciate them when they're older. So anyway, Bob is going to be at ICCFA. I believe he's going to have a booth. So I told him that I would tell you if you wanted to come by, because it's not his business. It's mostly a nonprofit that he runs out of, personal loss and the hope to help other people. So no link to that in the show notes. You'll have to be a subscriber to see it, but it's worth looking. So check out Funeral Service Insider, the newsletter, due out Sunday, and then in your email box Thursday. First up, I want to continue to talk about NOR as I've been talking about it. Natural organic reduction has been a huge story, but not a huge, let's say, contributor to funeral services bottom line, as it still kind of makes its way around in popularity. One of the things that I've been hitting on a lot lately, as you know if you're a regular listener, is this idea that you should at least make a deal with one of the several NOR companies who are always happy to make deals with funeral homes to accommodate people who want to be, human composted, but who don't have the ability to do it in their state, whether it's not legal or legal and not possible, which we've talked about 1,000 times. But almost every state where NOR is legal, it's still not possible. You still have to ship people to essentially Washington, a couple places in Colorado, a place in Nevada, I think, and Arizona are some of the places where there's a functional NOR system. So when I saw this story about Go's Funeral Care, a Colorado company, Fort Collins is when they're listed on this story, saying that they're doing NOR, I thought it was super cool. And I called them because that thing usually doesn't get under my radar very rarely. And I didn't know whether they had built a facility or had partnered with an out-of-state provider. And as it turns out, they have partnered with Earth Funeral, who has been doing some partnering around the country as it tries to expand. Now, the problem with NOR, insofar that it's a problem, is the investment is huge up front for something that really just more, I think, generates interest than generates actual funerals. It's not... The difficulty is that the expense to the calls is just still way out of whack, but that doesn't prevent you from offering it. And we always talk about, I always talk about funeral homes that say, well, we'll do whatever the family wants. Well, if you're not prepared to ship someone who wants NOR to someplace that does NOR, then you're not really in a good position to help families do whatever they want. So I was kind enough, I wasn't kind enough, Stephanie Goes was kind enough to talk to me, and we kind of spoke at length about the whole process. And what they decided was just what I've been saying, which is why I talked to her, because she proved me right. No, but she said that it just made more sense to partner with Earth Funeral because they did have people asking, but they didn't have enough people asking to justify building a facility. But I swung by their website, and there's a link to their website as well as to the story in the show notes. NOR isn't listed there yet. It is brand new. This is breaking news for them, but they do offer, they have green burial, they have casketed burial, they have aquamation, they have celebrations of life. And it's very clear right from the beginning in their website that they will do whatever a family requires of them within the law. But they take a look at the website because it's not the kind of boilerplate website that so often plagues like smaller places. So the website's cool to see, and it's cool for them. So Stephanie told me that they've had a couple of people call. They've had one person who's looking into kind of like a pre-need plan. And again, this is brand new. So the idea, though, that people are willing to have the conversation is, I think, what NOR should be about for most funeral homes. Whether you can offer it on site or not isn't relevant. Whether you're telling the community that it's one of the options is a great chance to remind them that funerals have almost certainly changed from the last time they went to one. There are more things available to them, and that people don't always have the opportunity to talk about it because mostly they will go to funerals that are what have kind of become known as traditional funerals, like in the funeral home with a viewing, all of those things. Or it's a cremation, a direct cremation where they either have a party or don't, and we've talked about that a lot, how it kind of falls on one side or the other of that. And what's exciting about companies like Go's and these others that I've mentioned who are offering NOR without providing NOR is they're jumpstarting the conversation. Ms. Go's told me that the aquamation was slow, but now it's picking up. And that's the thing. Once you get people interested in talking about and making decisions, and not to get them excited, but open to the possibilities of all the things that funeral service can provide them today that it couldn't or wouldn't provide them even a decade ago, it's just a conversation worth having, and putting something in the paper like, we now offer NOR, 1,000 people covered. I got a Google alert that Goes started offering NOR because it's such a rare thing to quote offer, unquote. But it doesn't have to be. Anyone at any of these places would be happy to talk to you, and they'd be happy to. What Ms. Goes said is that she had her proposed NOR person go to Earth Funeral. They did a tour, they got an understanding of it, and they made sure that they were comfortable with Earth Funeral taking care of their families in the way that you would, with a crematory or with any other time you're put in a position where you have to outsource some of your work. You want to make sure you're dealing with someone that you're comfortable with. So these are all really good ways of continuing to get people excited, or at least get people interested in planning their funerals and in thinking about what they want and in talking about what they want. So like I said, link to all that in the show notes. The story's, it's a press release, but it's interesting that they're willing to go out there and say, we offer this now. And it's something that, again, I can't recommend highly enough. I'd like to take just a second to talk to you about Kates-Boylston's upcoming event. It is our annual technology think tank slated for June 3rd and 4th in Asheville, North Carolina. And it's at a resort there. We were just talking about it, so I figured I'd, update you. The resort is beautiful. The speakers are coming in, and you can take a look at all of the speakers that we'll be having there. This is always one of our better events each year. It's an opportunity to kind of hang out with one another, which is really great, and talk about these technologies that the speakers are bringing to us. They're almost always cutting edge kind of things, like things you hadn't even heard about, let alone thought about. And that makes for an exciting event. Tickets right now are $197, and they will be until the end of April, but clock's ticking. So if you're within driving distance, there's absolutely no reason to not go. And if you're within flying distance, then it's worth at least taking a look to see if you're available. Click the link below to find out more information. There may or may not be another kind of body handling scandal this time in Houston, Texas. There's reports that the Richardson Mortuary in Houston has been given a cease and desist order because of some violations that the Texas Funeral Service Commission found during an inspection. That is the second part of the story. I want to talk about the first part. The first part of the story is the commission wasn't doing a regular inspection. The commission was responding to a complaint. And the complaint was there was an altercation between a funeral service worker and a family. And the family went to the Texas Funeral Service Commission. I don't know what kind of de-escalating program you have at your funeral home, but you definitely want to de-escalate before a family goes to the Funeral Service Commission and has them come in and arbitrate for them. And the investigation that discovered that what may have been, improperly stored bodies or may have been just a unfortunate coincidence during another inspection. If you put yourself in a position where the inspectors are coming in angry and with clipboards, you're asking for trouble. So I guess the moral of the story isn't just that the customer is always right, but de-escalation is critical because there's more on the line now. So instead of one angry family that was eventually satisfied and maybe wrote a nasty Google review or whatever, you have this family going and speaking with the Texas Funeral Service Commission, and now there's an investigation, and now there are stories in the paper. So this went from not failing to, because I don't know if they failed or maybe the person went crazy, but it went from a customer service complaint that has escalated into a multi-outlet report on accusations of body mishandling. And now, of course, if they did mishandle bodies, then, they deserve whatever they get. But if it's really just a case of an angry consumer, bereft angry consumer, that they weren't able to properly handle, it's just unfortunate for the funeral home. So we'll keep an eye on this and we'll see what happens going forward. They've been given a cease and desist. They have 14 days to get everything in order. And again, if there is another one, there should be less pity. So they have their 14 days. Hopefully they'll get everything in order. Hopefully they'll get everything straight with this upset family member. But also hopefully they'll keep their noses clean enough going forward that, the commission's not going to just come bursting in there and making it uncomfortable for all involved. Anyway, link to a couple of the different stories in the show notes. So as you may recall, I love to talk about earned media. And this is an interesting story about earned media in Florida, where a direct cremation provider had a little feature done on them. Their claim to fame, or what was the story was about, is you don't have to come in to their offices, but you can come into their offices. So if you want to come in and make arrangements, you can. And if you want to just direct cremation through them, you can also do that. What is really enticing and certainly worth looking at is, the person went out to do a story, so they took a picture of the business, and on the front of the business, it says $695 cremation, ! Why pay more? It's a valuable piece of advertising, if nothing else. And there's clearly not a crematory there. This is a broker, and they are doing, I guess, pretty well. But they have people come in, and so they have the inside set up as one of those more modern looking kind of arrangement rooms. Lots of light colors, lots of soft colors, and it looks pleasant to be in, even if no one goes there. And I thought that was the other interesting part, is that they have all these interior shots that no one will ever see, but it's a good way to make people feel a little bit more comfortable that this isn't, some guy in a dirty mailroom someplace, being a direct cremation broker. And as direct cremation becomes more kind of like racy to the bottom, as we've discussed before, this is a nice middle ground. Just a picture in the paper. Just, this is what we are. This is how we look. It looks like an office. It looks like a funeral home, and you have to give them credit for it. So there's a link to that in the show notes, and it's worth taking a look at. It's important for me to admit that I have at least a little bit of bias when I read customer complaints, and when the news people get involved in customer complaints, only because I have, as you do, enough insight of the company, of the industry, that sometimes things just sound wrong. And this is one of those things that sounds wrong but appears not to be, and it's baffling. So again, I'll have a link in the show notes, and you can read all the reporting on your own. A quick summary is that a family was told that the grave for their mom wasn't going to be ready 45 minutes before the burial was scheduled. They got a call. The funeral director got a call as they were getting ready to leave saying, "Don't come. We are not ready for you." And of course, that wasn't acceptable. So the two sisters went down, and they found a man with a shovel digging the grave. And I read it twice. You can read it. You can read it for yourself. I don't know why they would send someone out with a shovel. This is this happened at Pleasant Valley Cemetery. It is in Fairfax, Virginia, not far from me, Fairfax County, Virginia. What was weird to me, and this is in no way calling them out, is that it is an SCI property. And of course, because it's SCI, no one was able to respond to the questions from the newspaper, and we'll find out, hopefully before too long. This news organization has been investigating since March 26th. They ran the story yesterday. I would say it's the 17th as I record this. So they ran it on the 16th. So they asked on the 26th what happened, why there was a guy with a shovel instead of an empty hole, or at least a backhoe working overtime. And they didn't get any response. And again, I will say it because I just said it in the other story. You got to respond to these things. I mean, even if you're SCI, because now this is a story, and now they're going to continue to report on this poor family that showed up and found a man with a shovel trying to open a grave that should have been opened at least that morning, probably the day before. So there is a link to it, to the story in the show notes, and I'm certainly going to report on this as there is more to say. That will do it for this episode. In case you missed it, From Kates-Boylston is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written, edited, and videoed by me, Tony Russo. Please subscribe wherever you're listening now. And also, please phone me with comments, questions, concerns. You can leave a voicemail at 732-746-0233, extension 709. That is 732-746-0233, extension 709. If you leave a message and you just want me to know and don't want me to tell people that you called, that is fine with me. People do it all the time. But if you'd like to leave a message, I'd be happy to either play it on the show or to respond to it on the show as you request. You can also email me by going to this post and clicking on my email address below it. That will do it for this week. We will catch you next time.